Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'll be sharing my thoughts on The Walking Dead Season 11 Episode 11. As is the norm with all my videos, I won't be holding back on any spoilers, so please do keep that in mind. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. I'm going to begin this video by saying I told you so. I told you so. I've been saying since last year that this lady isn't the real Stephanie and that this lady here is the real Stephanie, and this episode proves that I am correct. So the moral of the story, ladies and gentlemen, is that your boy Josh is always right, and I am the best YouTuber in the world.
Always right, my butt. I mean, what about this video, buddy?
The Walking Dead theory, RJ isn't real. What the hell was I smoking when I made that video? Okay, look, obviously I'm not always right, but I did get this one right, and I feel proud of myself, so, I don't know, maybe send me a cookie in the post. Not that I can eat cookies at the moment anyway, because I had my operation and I can only eat soft food, so I don't know, maybe put a cookie in a blender and send it to me. Yeah, let's move on. The majority of this episode focuses on Eugene as he looks for the missing Stephanie, who I will refer to as Shira for the rest of this episode, because we find out at the end of the episode that her real name is actually Shira. And this lady here, her real name isn't Stephanie, her name is actually Max. Stephanie was just a pseudonym that she used on the radio, it's the name of her mother, but for all intents and purposes, she is the real Stephanie because she was the Stephanie that she was talking to Eugene on the radio, but her real name is Max. So is everyone following so far? Does this make sense to everyone?
Oh, I get it. What you're trying to say is that Stephanie is actually Mercer.
What the hell are you talking about? I haven't even mentioned Mercer in this video yet. God, you're an absolute moron. This episode begins with Eugene in bed with Shira, blissfully unaware of what is about to come. And I guess these two are just waking up, and it's the start of the day, they're waking up from their night's sleep and maybe sex, whatever. And I have an important observation, ladies and gentlemen, that I have to point out, right? So, Eugene is waking up, he's waking up in the morning, and this dude has socks on in bed. Who does this? What kind of animal wears socks to sleep? This is disgraceful. Absolutely barbaric. Who on earth would do this? And also, the dude wakes up from his sleep and he's wearing like a t-shirt and he looks like he's dressed. And I don't know, I just found this odd because I'm a dude who sleeps like just wearing his boxers. So I found this very strange. I mean, not that I particularly wanted to see a naked Eugene wake up in the morning, but there you go. Did you miss me, YouTube? Did you miss this hard-hitting critical analysis of The Walking Dead? I mean, who else would mention Eugene's socks, eh? I bet Knockbro Nation, I bet they didn't notice this because their brains can't comprehend it. They're not as clever as I am, They just aren't as great as me. I've been away for 2 weeks and I'm just sabotaging my channel, right? Let's carry on with the video. So to cut a long story short, Eugene says that he loves Shira whilst she's at his apartment. She says that she loves him back and she agrees to move in with him. And then these two agree to have like an ice cream date later that day. And Eugene waits for her, at the spot where they'd arranged to meet. But she never shows, and the scene then transitions from day to night, or afternoon to evening, whatever, and Eugene is still sat there on his lonesome because she hasn't showed. Eugene does eventually get off his arse and he goes to Shira's apartment and bangs on the door, but she doesn't answer, but we see her packing in the bedroom, and she's obviously going somewhere, she's leaving him, whatever, and then Eugene goes into full investigation mode because he wants to find out where she's gone, because he believes that she's been kidnapped by the Commonwealth because she somehow got on their bad side or got on the government's bad side, and he ropes Princess into his investigation. Now, I just want to say a couple of words about Princess because when she was first introduced to the show, I was very harsh on her. I said stuff like, oh, I don't like these kind of people. These kind of people are over the top and quirky. They just irritate me. Yeah, I didn't have many nice words to say about her when she was first introduced, but this season, I think she's been really likable. I like her in this episode. She made me laugh when she knocks on Eugene's apartment and she says, oh, I've got a lasagna, but she doesn't actually have anything. She just says it because she's like, oh, when people say they have food, you have to let them in. And I just find her to be, a decent person. I find her to be really likable this season. And, she seems quite happy at the Commonwealth. She's got a nice job. She's got her place. She says that she wants to save up to buy a cat. And I mean, what else can you want from life, ladies and gentlemen? And she seems to be quite happy in her surroundings. And I don't share any ill will towards her for not wanting to rock the boat because things have worked out okay for her. I mean, she's definitely, her life is definitely a lot better than it was when she was living in that town on her own with no one to talk to. So she's loving the Commonwealth and I don't have any problem with that. And I'll admit I was kind of worried, about her getting involved with Eugene this episode, because I didn't want her to be punished for helping Eugene out of his investigation, because I didn't want her life to be ruined. And thankfully, she does manage to get away, without getting any repercussions from helping Eugene. Anyway, getting back on track, Eugene carries out this investigation, and, he has this big wall where he's linking all these people together. And he finds this dude who he believes was at Stephanie's apartment the night she went missing. And this culminates with him and Princess basically breaking into his apartment to try to look for evidence. And they then get spotted by another resident there, and they ending up in a cell. Hornsby visits them in the cell, and he lets them out with a slap on the wrists. And when he's in the cell, he basically acts like he's doing Eugene a favor. He says to Eugene, "Oh, I get it. You're just stressed about the disappearance of your girlfriend. I understand. Sign this document when we'll let you go." When in actual fact, he's massively screwing him over, which I'll get to a bit later. But yeah, Hornsby, he's great in this episode. But yeah, this dude, he acts like he's your friend, but he's really not. After being released, Eugene returns to his apartment, and he's still undeterred. He still wants to carry on with his investigation, but Princess, by this point, she's pretty much had enough. She just says to Eugene, "Look, she left you, she ghosted you, she got scared, whatever. She didn't want to be with you, just deal with it." And whereas, Eugene's saying, "Oh, this conspiracy goes even deeper, Hornsby's involved, etc." But she's just had enough. And even though at this point I did believe in the evidence that Eugene had obtained, I will admit there was some doubt that was beginning to creep in my mind. Part of me did think, oh, maybe she did just leave him. Maybe she just didn't want to be with him. And that's why she left. I mean, it wouldn't have made for the most engaging story, if a character just leaves someone, they don't want to be with them. But it can happen. I mean, we saw on Fear the Walking Dead that, what's her name, June, she walked out on John Dory because she was worried about getting too close with him, and she left. So it can happen. So I will admit, I did have a bit of doubt creeping into my mind at this point. Eugene, though, is still convinced that Stephanie was taken by the Commonwealth, and he carries on with his investigation without Princess, and it takes him to this building where he does end up actually finding Shira. And how does she repay him? How does she repay her lover finding her after going missing? Well, by punching him in the stomach and then just walking off and not even acknowledging him. And yeah, this was really cold because, Eugene's been suffering since she's been gone. This guy has been devastated by her leaving, and she just gives him a gut punch, walks off. Doesn't care. She does not give a shit. She doesn't even attempt to explain where she's been, what's been going on. She can't even be bothered to come up with a lie. She can't even be bothered to make up a story. She just, at this point, she doesn't care. Doesn't give a shit about Eugene. All she had to say to him was, "Look, sorry, Eugene, I just couldn't deal with you wearing socks in bed," and then punch him in the stomach. And, I would have found that reasonable. I'd have been like, yeah, fair enough, I understand. But in all seriousness, the reason why she doesn't even interact with Eugene is that she's checked out. By this point, she doesn't care. The relationship was never real. She never loved him. It was just an act. She does not give a shit about him. And yeah, I don't know how people can do this. I don't know how people can get into relationships with people, and and pretend to be in love with people. I don't know how they can do it. Oh, hang on. I think I'm getting a text from Scotty G. Give me a second. "Your mum's pretended to love you since birth, old buddy. Woohoo, hoo, hoo." God, he even sounds like a prick when he texts. This whole Shira setup reminded me of those romance scams that you read up about on the internet. Maybe she's related to the Tinder swindler. Who knows? "Eugene, my enemies are after me. Send me the location of Alexandria now." I don't know what that voice was about. It's at this point that Lance Hornsby appears from the shadows, and Eugene, he puts it all together in his head. He realises that Lance had just used Shira to get information out of Eugene. Their relationship was never real. It had just been one massive con. And obviously, Eugene is absolutely devastated, as I'd already said. This was the first time he's been in a relationship with someone. He's opened his heart up to someone. He loved her. And the whole thing had been a sham. And this guy, he is distraught. And Lance doesn't apologise. You'd expect him to show some compassion, but Lance doesn't care. Instead he says to Eugene, "You should be thanking me. You should be thanking me because this lie got you to the Commonwealth and all your friends to the Commonwealth." And I understand where Lance is coming from, but my God, it just seemed so fucking heartless to say that to this dude who is absolutely devastated. Eugene says to him, "Right, I'm going to tell everyone what you're like. I'm going to tell everyone who you really are." And then Lance says, "Well, you remember that piece of paper you signed whilst you were in the cell? It basically said that you're crazy and that you've got paranoia and that you're acting out of, stress and madness, and no one's going to believe you anyway." So, yeah, what I said earlier about Lance pretending to be his friend? He is not. He just screwed over Eugene completely. And I really like that this dude is is a really good manipulator. Like, he always seems to be one step ahead of the protagonist. He's a different kind of antagonist to what we're used to on the show, and he's quickly becoming one of my favorite characters. I really find him interesting to watch, and I'll talk about him more in the next episode, in the next review, because he's really good in episode 12 as well. But yeah, Lance Hornsby, for me, steals the show in this episode, alongside Josh McDermott, who also puts in a fantastic performance as Eugene. Eugene does run into Max at the end of the episode, and Max repeats like a line that she said to Eugene on the radio, so it does turn out that Eugene was actually talking to her on the radio before they then swapped her over with Shira. And so yeah, these two do interact more in episode 12, and I'll talk about that more in the next video. But anyway, for now, let's just move away from Eugene and all his woman troubles. Let's talk about Connie and Kelly. So Connie and Kelly in this episode are trying to do their job as journalists, trying to report the news, but the Commonwealth are stopping them. The Commonwealth only want them to report what they tell them to report. They're only allowed to ask questions which they put towards them, which they ask them to ask people, basically. It's not very good phrasing, but you know what I mean. And I mean, at one point in the episode, Connie even goes on what she calls like a propaganda mission, where she has to hang out with Mercer and has to ask him questions which the Commonwealth have given to her to ask him. And she's not allowed to ask anything outside of, this kind of text which they've given her, this block of text. And of course, I understand the point the show is trying to make here, about corruption and state control of media and biases and all that kind of stuff. But it pains me to say this, because you know how much I adore Connie and I really like her, but this part of the episode just didn't do a lot for me. I just found it kind of dull, and I don't know if it's because Connie's been paired up with Kelly, who is a character I don't really care that much about. I find Kelly to be quite a boring character, and I understand that Kelly has to be with her because she's Kelly's interpreter, but I think it would be more interesting if Connie was with someone like Magna, or even Luke if he was still on the show. What the hell happened to him? Because they're more interesting characters. I think the reason why Connie and Daryl's pairing worked so well in season 9 is because they were so different, and that, Connie had someone who was completely different to her to bounce off of, and I think that's why it works. But Connie and Kelly, just a bit dull. And like I said, it really pains me to say that because I adore Connie, but yeah, this part of the episode, like, I get what they're trying to do, but it just kind of dragged for me. It didn't do a lot for me. Come the end of the episode, Connie is handed this list of what looks like a Commonwealth hit list, and it has all the names of the people who've pissed off the Commonwealth. And at the bottom of the list, it has the name of Tyler, who is the kid who took the hostage in episode 9, I believe, took Max hostage. And Tyler goes missing this episode. So I'm assuming, this is what Connie and Kelly are going to look into next time we see them. And, maybe their story will get more interesting as the show progresses, hopefully, and it might win me over. But yeah, it just didn't do a lot for me, this section of the episode. We also witness Carol going on another mission with Lance Hornsby this episode. And they go visit like this opium farm, which is on the outskirts of the Commonwealth. It's a separate community from the Commonwealth. And I mean, I like the world building, because I was always under the impression that with the Commonwealth being so big, they're basically self-sufficient. I wouldn't expect them to have to be relying on drug dealers, these people growing opium outside their walls to get opium in their hospitals. I would have expected they'd have just done everything themselves. So I like that aspect of it. But yeah, again, there's not really a lot to say about this. I mean, basically, it turns out that their leader is screwing the people over. The leader of this drug facility is screwing the people over, not giving them the supplies and the money that Lance is giving to them, instead taking it all for himself. And it ends with Lance arresting him and taking him to prison. And yeah, it was okay. Like I said, I like the world building, but it's not an awful lot to say about this part of the episode. Anyway, 2 more things that I quickly want to mention before I wrap this video up. Firstly, this little scene where Eugene looks up at the balcony and sees a vision of Shira because he's thinking about her. There was no need to put that in the show. It looked fucking terrible. It looked so bad. Like, we could always make the assumption at that point in time, Eugene was thinking of her. You didn't need to put it in. It just looks so bad. It looks so bad. And secondly, Rosita somehow makes the Commonwealth uniform, she looks hot in this ridiculous uniform. She somehow makes it work. Important piece of information that I thought you should all know. Overall, I think this was a good episode. Like the episode that came before it, it was kind of a strange watch because it felt like a different show, because, we were seeing a lot of Eugene doing this detective work, and we get these black and white flashbacks of him talking about the players involved in this big conspiracy. It kind of tried to go for this kind of detective, noir kind of genre or whatever. It's trying to emulate that. And yeah, it felt very strange to watch. It was different to a lot of the rest of the Walking Dead episodes, but it worked. I liked it. I think Eugene was great in this episode. I think Lance Hornsby is quickly developing into a fantastic villain. Connie and Kelly just didn't do it for me, unfortunately, like I said. But overall, Yeah, it's another good episode. I think the Commonwealth arc has got off to a very solid start, and I enjoyed this episode. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you like this episode as much as I did, or did you dislike it? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know, and I shall see you all very soon. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you to my best buddies. Thank you to my best buddies. Thank you to my best buddies for giving me some money.